The City of London. In Shakespeare's day, London consisted of a 1 square mile area surrounding St. Paul's Cathedral. Today, that square mile, the neighborhood known as the City, is still the financial heart of London, densely packed with history and bustling with business. Hi, I'm Rick Steves. Thanks for joining me on a walk through the City. This 1.5 mile long walk from the Temple to London Bridge parallels the River Thames. It follows the same road that's been used for centuries. Yes, it's a concrete jungle, swinging through the streets as if on vines. We'll pass desk monkeys clutching cell phones like bananas.
Okay, Rick. I better take it from here.
Notice how the traffic curves completely around St. Clement Danes. It's an island church left stranded in the middle of the Strand when the road was widened around it. St. Clement Danes introduces us to two themes we'll encounter time and time again on this walk: Christopher Wren and the Blitz of World War II. This is the first of several Wren-built churches on this walk. After London was leveled by the Great Fire of 1666, Christopher Wren was hired to rebuild the city. Of the 50-some churches he built, 23 decorate London to this day. This church was also blitzed heavily during the Nazi air raids in World War II. The Royal Courts of Justice. When former Spice Girls sue the tabloids for libel, when the Da Vinci Code author gets sued for plagiarism, or when ex-Beatles pay $50 million divorce settlements to gold diggers, the trial is likely to be held here. Twinings has been in business since 1706, and this store has been in the Twining family for most of that time. When this narrow store first opened its doors, tea was an exotic concoction from newly explored lands. The Chinese statues at the entrance remind us that tea came first from China, then India. The Temple Bar Monument. This statue of a griffin, a mythological beast with wings and a lion's body, marks the official entrance to the city. As you pass it, you leave the City of Westminster and enter the City of London proper. Prince Henry's Room. This half-timbered 3-story Tudor-style building from 1610 is one of the few to survive the Great Fire. In Shakespeare's day, the entire city was packed rooftop to rooftop with wood and plaster buildings like this. Many were 5 and 6 stories high with narrow frontage. Little wonder that a small fire could spread so quickly and become the Great Fire of 1666. The top floor of the house is Prince Henry's Room, once an office for the son of King Charles I. For 2 centuries, from about 1100 until 1300, European Christians battled Middle Eastern Muslims over control of Jerusalem in a series of wars called the Crusades. The Temple Church is a Crusader church built in 1185, the days of England's Crusader king Richard the Lionhearted. Notice the crenellated roof and, in the courtyard alongside, the statue atop the pillar of a Crusader knight on horseback. The Temple Church is so called because it was the headquarters of the Knights Templar, a band of heavily armed, highly trained monks who joined the Crusades. Over their armor, they wore long white robes decorated with red crosses. In their secret rituals, the knights were sworn to chastity and to the protection of pilgrims on their way to the Muslim-held Holy Land. By 1300, the Templars' mission of protecting pilgrims had become a corrupt protection racket, and they'd grown rich loaning money to kings and popes. Later, those same kings and popes condemned the monks as heretics and sodomites and confiscated their lands. With the knights gone, the Temple Church was rented to lawyers who built around the church. Back outside the church, take in your surroundings. You're in the so-called Inns of Court. Browse around a bit. At least walk through the arcade of white columns next to the church. The Church of St. Dunstan in the west, and the Great Fire of 1666. This church stands where the Great Fire finally ended. On September 2nd, 1666, a small fire started near London Bridge. We'll be there later. For 4 days, the fire raged, growing larger and larger, sweeping westward, fanned by hot and blustery weather, devouring the wooden city as it went. As it approached St. Dunstan, 40 theology students battled the blaze. They held it off until the wind finally shifted, and the fire slowly burned itself out.
Where the Great Fire finally ended.
The narrow lanes of 1700s London. Make your way through these twisting alleyways and cramped buildings that now house urban hobbits. They give a faint glimpse of the London of the 1700s, a crowded city of 500,000 people. After the Great Fire, so it wouldn't burn down again, London was resurrected in brick and stone rather than wood. But they stuck to the same medieval street plan, resulting in the narrow lanes lined with brick buildings like these. As you enter Johnson's world, listen to what the writer told his young friend and biographer, James Boswell.
"Sir," he said, "Sir, if you wish to have a just notion of the magnitude of this city, you must survey the innumerable little lanes and courts. When a man is tired of London," wrote Samuel Johnson, "he is tired of life, for there is in London all that life can afford."
Johnson lived in this house from 1748 until 1759. It was here, in the attic of this house, that he produced his most famous work, a dictionary of the English language. He also occasionally put his own droll spin on words.
Oats, a grain which is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people.
Think of the changes this city has been through. If you were standing here in December 1940, the morning after a German Luftwaffe firebomb raid, you'd see nothing but a flat, smoldering landscape of rubble with St. Paul's rising high above it, almost miraculously intact. And standing here in September 1666, you'd see nothing at all but smoke and ruins. 1 year before the Great Fire of 1666, London was hit with a devastating outbreak of the bubonic plague. If you were walking here in September 1665, you'd hear cries of, "Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!"
"But I'm not dead yet."
It was men patrolling the streets with wagons to cart away dead bodies.
"But I'm not dead!"
Shut up. The corpses were carried off to mass graves, including one near here. By fall, London was a ghost town. And throughout England, people avoided Londoners like the plague. The Old Bailey stands atop the former Newgate prison. In medieval times, this was notorious for its cruelty and countless executions by hanging. In the 18th century, there was the radically religious William Penn, who went on to found Pennsylvania. In the 19th century, Old Bailey prosecuted the criminally homosexual Oscar Wilde. The Temple Bar Gate was once the ceremonial west entrance to the City of London, the place now marked by the Griffin statue. In 1672, this stone archway was erected on Fleet Street, built by none other than Christopher Wren. Enter through Temple Bar Gate. You emerge into Paternoster Square. As you can see, the square is completely modern. This 21st century square was designed to allow maximum urban development while not obliterating views of St. Paul's.
Our next stop is the street called Cheapside, located behind St. Paul's. The walkway is lined with modern shops.
No shopping, no shopping. Cheapside, Shakespeare's London. The word cheap meant market. That market heritage is still seen today in the names of some of the streets that branch off it. Bread Street, Milk Street, Honey Street, and so on. But as you walk along it today, it's clear that the ambiance is far from Elizabethan, and it's far from cheap. It's a street of fancy offices, upscale clothing stores, and ye old Starbucks. This whole area around St. Paul's was destroyed in World War II. Remember, London was bombed heavily by Nazi warplanes. As the war began, Hitler threatened to invade the Isle of Britain. When that didn't work, he punished the pesky Brits with a series of devastating air raids. This is called the Blitz. Cheapside was absolutely flattened. 20,000 Londoners were killed. Bank Junction. This intersection is the center of financial London. the neighborhood nicknamed the Square Mile. It's where London helped invent the capitalist economy centuries ago. And today, you're surrounded by skyscrapers housing the multinationals that continue to make London one of the globe's financial capitals. London's Square Mile must handle more money than any square mile on Earth. It hosts 500 foreign and British banks. The Monument. This 200-foot-tall column is Christopher Wren's tribute to the Great Fire of 1666. The Great Fire started near here. At 2 o'clock in the morning of September 2nd, 1666, a small fire broke out in a baker's oven here on Pudding Lane. In 4 days, 80% of the city was incinerated. The good news? Incredibly, only 9 people died. The fire cleansed a plague-infested city. London Bridge. Let's finish our walk where the city started. London was born as a river trading town, and a bridge has stood on this spot for 2,000 years. The Romans built the first wooden footbridge over the Thames to Londinium around 50 A.D. The Thames flows from the interior of England to the open sea. Since Roman times, London Bridge has been torn down and rebuilt at least 4 times, including in 1014 during the Danish invasions. That event may have inspired a song passed down to us as "London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady." The most famous version of the bridge was crossed by everyone from Richard the Lionhearted to Henry VIII to Shakespeare to Isaac Newton to Charles Darwin. It was built around 1200 and stood for more than 6 centuries. In 1823, that famous bridge was replaced by a brick version. In 1967, that bridge was sold to an American. It was dismantled, shipped to Arizona, and reassembled all 10,000 bricks in Lake Havasu City, where it now stands. The London Bridge of today, 3 spans of boring, traffic-clogged concrete, was built in 1972. We hope you've enjoyed your walk through the City of London.